continuing our series of videos that discuss the relationship between Lithuania and other countries around the world, let's move to one of Europe's largest economies, France. Apart from, or should I say, Bonaparte from, Napoleon's forces crossing through Lithuania in 1812, it doesn't seem like France and Lithuania have too many historical relations, at least not nearly as much as Lithuania and its neighbor countries. Still, this is something that we will briefly touch on today, while also discussing the modern relations between Lithuania and France. And we will also discuss what people from the two countries think of each other. And this part will include a special guest. If you're more interested in that part of the video, feel free to skip to this time to avoid all the history and geopolitical stuff. But anyways, let's get started. According to an article by LRT, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte famously crossed Lithuania during his 1812 Russian campaign. During this French period, he spent some time socializing with high society in Vilnius and Kaunas. It is said that both Lithuanians and Poles hoped that Napoleon would liberate them from the Russian Empire, and that the French emperor was well received in Vilnius for this reason. Virgilijus Pugačiauskas from the Lithuanian Institute of History says that Lithuanians saw Napoleon and his army as saviors. Unfortunately, while French soldiers may have driven back Russian forces, they also started looting from locals. In Kaunas, writings from a monk say that soldiers forcefully entered homes and monasteries and seized food, cattle, and horses. In Vilnius, it was reported that soldiers harassed women and looted churches and manors and cemeteries. Well, that's not a great way to begin French-Lithuanian relations, but it can be argued that things have somewhat improved since then, or at least haven't gotten worse. Fast forwarding to the 1900s, the website Dead Country Stamps and Banknotes says that the area around modern-day Klaipėda was given the status of an autonomous region after Germany's defeat in the First World War. In 1920, in accordance with the Treaty of Versailles, this area was put under French administration, and French troops were sent to protect the area. Without getting too deep into the details of this hotly contested area, I'll mention that a few years later, in 1923, the Klaipėda Revolt took place, and this led to a formal international agreement that the area was to be part of Lithuania. The Soviets would go on to occupy Lithuania after the Second World War, and with the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union, diplomatic relations between France and Lithuania were re-established on August 29, 1991. While Lithuanians had more freedoms to emigrate after their country regained independence, I couldn't really find anything significant to report that was related to France. And it does seem that more Lithuanians chose to seek opportunities in countries like Germany and the UK. However, I can tell you that shortly after regaining independence in 1992, the Vilnius International French Lyceum, or LIFV, was established. This international school says that they teach in the French language and follow the French national education curriculum. This kindergarten to high school institution is still running today and has over 500 students. When it comes to modern-day relations, there are a handful of major agreements between France and Lithuania worth mentioning. In 2021, Lithuania agreed to send troops and a transport aircraft to support the French-led mission in Mali. According to LRT, the original letter of request from France's president said, "I wanted to assure you that a contribution from your country would be particularly useful and valuable. I hope that we can count on your support." Throughout 2021 and early 2022, France was a key country voicing its support of Lithuania amid growing Chinese political and economic pressure. If you want to know why Lithuania ended up on China's bad side, I have a video that you can check out. France's support of Lithuania appears to have paid off, because in June 2022, Lithuania signed a letter of intent to purchase French self-propelled artillery. The good relations continue to this day because much more recently, France committed itself to deploying its fighter jets to Cholet for the very first time. This deployment is part of NATO's Baltic Air Policing mission and is part of a larger reinforcement of France's contribution to protecting the eastern flank of NATO. So with all of these recent events, it would appear that France and Lithuania maintain close and positive relations with each other, and provide mutual support on various political and military issues. But what about on a personal level? Well, to help me get some clarity on this side of things, I talked to two local Vilnius-based people who relocated from France to get their thoughts on the differences between French and Lithuanian culture. So meet freelance photographer and graphic designer Tom, who goes by the Instagram handle Tom Captures. Originally from Bordeaux, Tom's girlfriend had the opportunity to go to another country for the last year of her studies in 2020.
And we kind of chose Lithuania randomly because we didn't know that much about it. but it was like the opportunity to go somewhere new, and probably like you don't get that much opportunity to go to Lithuania, even for tourism, because it's not as well known. It was like, okay, let's choose at least somewhere we don't know, we've never been in vacation before.
And so together they decided to give Lithuania a chance. When asked about Tom's pre-existing knowledge of the country, he said he didn't know all that much. He knew that Lithuania was a cold, Baltic country previously occupied by the Soviets, but that's it. And when asked if he thinks that the average French person knows about as much, he responded,
I would say most people in France don't really know the difference between Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Like they know it's close to each other, but I was in the same boat actually. So most people just know these three countries are being kind of like the same and don't really understand the difference between them. And most people also, I think, believe that it's way up north, like really like Alaska or Siberia climates. Most people think it's really like there's never any sunny day, there's no summer. At least that's what I've heard from people that didn't know much about Lithuania.
Marie-Line, another France-born expat living in Lithuania, tells me that in the 2000s, Lithuania faced a large wave of emigration and brain drain, and this shaped her perception of the country. She says, "I was afraid that I would be the only young person living here. People were talking badly about Lithuania, about its economic and social situation, and Soviet mindset." But now having been here for over 6 years, she says she was happy to find that things were different from what she expected, and that it was the best decision of her life. Marie-Line echoes what Tom said, and adds that many French people might still associate Lithuania with Russia, and that people speak Russian here, and everything is in Cyrillic script. But overall, it seems that the majority of people in France just aren't familiar with Lithuania, which isn't really all that surprising. And I think if I continue this series on international relations with Lithuania, this might be a common theme with most big countries, even with our Polish neighbors mostly not having an opinion about Lithuania. At the same time, it was pointed out that Lithuania's vocal support of Taiwanese and Ukrainian independence, as well as against the Russian invasion, have gone a long way to raise the profile of the small Baltic country, with more people now knowing about Lithuania. So then I asked Tom and Marie-Line about their thoughts regarding the big differences between French and Lithuanian culture.
People feel to be more outgoing and extroverted in France compared to Lithuania. That was the main like cultural shock when arriving there. Like for example, people greet each other. If you see like your neighbor or someone living in the same building as you always like have a little small chat and conversation. And here I've noticed that you can spend years living in the same building, and every time you see your neighbor, you barely talk to each other.
And when it comes to the Lithuanian restaurant and cafe experience, Tom says,
"It's more like only transactional here. I feel like you only talk to say, can I have this? And they bring it to you and you say thanks. And in France, usually it starts a conversation and you kind of know stuff about the waiter and they know stuff about you after talking a bit. It's like more part of the job to be also like to make people at ease by making them like feel like they're regulars, like they matter. But yeah, it's just different because I wouldn't say I like here or in France better. But yeah, that was a big shock at first.
And when asked about what he likes most about his time in Lithuania, Tom talks about how accessible green space is, even when living in the city.
Nature is really important here, it seems, and I like that about Vilnius and Lithuania as a whole. Like, for example, the access to green spaces, parks, or even going to the lake is very respected, and you can really do that. There are buses that can bring you to these places, and I feel like in France, these places are too remote, even if they exist, to be served. So I like the fact that you can really go into nature and enjoy the peacefulness of it.
He also talks about something that seems to be a fairly common realization for foreigners, the introversion of most Lithuanians.
Yeah, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming in a culture where people are very outgoing. And me, as being more introverted, I think I enjoy being able to just go outside for an entire day with my headphones and not having anyone talking to me if I don't feel like it.
Marilyn adds that people are far less open to talking about their personal lives and are also less touchy. At the same time, she says that young people are more open and more likely to express their opinions on bigger issues in politics. But Marilyn also says that while there is some distance and some difficulty in getting people to open up, her experience is that this melts away over time once people build trust and form a connection. Another interesting thing she raised as a big difference between France and Lithuania is the perception of Russia. She believes that the physical distance between France and Russia, and perhaps the lack of direct occupation, created a lack of seriousness about Russian aggression, how they were never really perceived as a threat. So when she moved to Lithuania from France, she quickly learned how much more serious and worried Lithuanians were about Russia, which she says unfortunately proved to be right. And then when it comes to dislikes or just things that aren't as positive, there were a few things that Tom had to say. Questions about marriage was one thing that stood out to him.
People always asking to me and my girlfriend why we aren't married yet. That's something we get a lot. And in France, especially when you're a couple under 30, you don't really get that kind of questions. And here, even from young people, a lot of people worry and they're thinking like the relationship must be bad if you're not married or even thinking about marriage. And in France, you can marry each other if you want, but it's not like a big concern, not as much as here.
Tom goes on to say that it feels like there's some pressure to be in a relationship, get married and have kids, and all those markings of a traditional family life. Things that French people just might not be so concerned about. Oh, and both Tom and myself agree that setting off random fireworks seems to be quite a Lithuanian thing compared to where both of us are coming from.
And here I was shocked to see like every few days in the same street as you have a firework going off.
And so if we move on to the opinions that Lithuanians have about the French, things seem overall positive and friendly, or at least neutral. Most people love the culture and the history of France, even if most Lithuanians only have Paris as their frame of reference. One Lithuanian says that there is a vague association with French people and being rude and unfriendly, even though she's never met any herself. But overall, it would seem that the French people that know about Lithuania like Lithuania, and most Lithuanians have a mixed or neutral attitude about France. It was really interesting to look at the history as well as the current state of French-Lithuanian relations. With these big topics, I feel like there's usually something I've missed, so please do comment down below and let me know if there's anything else worth mentioning. My thanks to Tom and Marilyn and all of the others who provided me with some information to make this video. A lot of the beautiful Vilnius footage you see in today's video was actually captured by Tom himself, who's also, again, a graphic designer. So yeah, check him out on Instagram if you have the chance. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching another video, and I'll see you next time.